My name's John Pope. I am a double bass player, an improvising musician, a creative musician. I lead the John Pope Quintet. It's a band with 3 horn players, bass and drums. Has 1 foot in free jazz and 60s avant-garde music and 1 foot in modern European experimental improvisational avant-garde practice. This project is kind of very informed by togetherness and the process of making music together in a kind of communal and congregational kind of way. I've been thinking a lot about how certain kinds of spiritual music have built into them a togetherness aspect. The way that they get made is a reflection of the people who are making it together. And what it means to share spaces with other people, which is obviously something that post-lockdown I think has been on everyone's mind to some degree or another. And the ways in which we are encouraged to think of ourselves as individuals, and whilst that's good and helpful in some aspects, it doesn't always serve the things that I think are the most important and nourishing. And, you know, when we think collectively and act collectively and put our common humanity at the center of what we're doing, I feel like we get these incredible results that are really enriching and heart-feeding and really lay out what humanity's for and about. As an artist, I feel like there are a lot of things that preoccupy me. Some of them are kind of real world concerns. You know, I'm quite socially conscious. I'd like to think I try and be. And then also I spend a lot of time daydreaming and thinking about things that are more kind of fantastical or spiritual or internal. On a thematic level, that process of making work and seeing what resonates with you sort of tells you what the theme is a little bit. It's a little bit sometimes like the process of journaling, where you'll just sit down and write how you're feeling or thinking. By kind of analyzing the background radiation of your own thinking, you learn what you're preoccupied by. I do it with tarot cards quite a bit, where I'll sit and draw a card and look at it, and then the intuitive response that I have to it will kind of tell me how I'm feeling a little bit. In terms of the musical material, it, for me, tends to be a very intuitive thought, a very small fragment of melody that might appear. And sometimes I'll play a little bit of something and go, oh, that feels like it has more to it. And then I'll play it for a little bit. I might write it down. I might record it into my phone. And then I'll just keep it as a little snippet of something. And then when the time comes to work on material to present to an ensemble, I'll go back and I'll sift through a lot of that raw material and find things and try and combine them. And it becomes kind of alchemical almost, where you're taking little bits and pieces of information and seeing what they mean on their own and then what they mean in conjunction with other ideas. Improvising is a part of my practice, you know, alongside running scales and alongside kind of keeping my chops up. Just playing and spending time with the instrument is a big part of what I do. I can sort of start from nothing and eventually fully realize music appears just because you respond to what's happening and you provide it yourself. It kind of comes out of you. If you let kids run around in an empty field, they'll invent a game that involves an empty field. And if you put a structure in it, if you put a climbing frame or a slide or a rock or whatever in the middle of it, then the game they invent will be impacted by that. You know, they'll invent something that uses it. I'm trying to create a situation that I can slot the musicians that I work with into and say, what do you make of this? You know, what are you going to do with this little provocation that I've provided? That could be quite simple, or it could be quite a complicated structure that's designed to push someone in a specific way. Maybe make some slightly uncomfortable juxtapositions of someone playing one thing and someone playing something else, and then taking another person and going, right, that's happening. I'm going to push you down the middle and see what you do, and letting them loose in a playground with a few interesting melodies in to kind of hook onto, just the results are always going to be exciting. It's always going to be thrilling just to see what happens. A lot of the musicians who I've been very inspired by seem to touch on this idea that the music is a kind of constant and that you come to it. And it's almost like by putting yourself in a sort of devotional or congregational mindset and providing a sort of a ritual space like a magic circle or something, you step into the stream and the music is realized. For this project, the initial idea that I had was to try and record live. The excitement and the kind of extra layer of adrenaline and pressure that having an audience provides. They're having an experience with you, and that total kind of alchemy of musician, piece, situation, audience, the sound that makes, the music that makes is fully charged. And I really, that's what I wanted to capture. And that's what I wanted to get down. So I approached the Star and Shadow in Newcastle because their venue is great and it's a beautiful DIY space. And I asked about performing 2 nights there and recording with Blank Studios, which is a studio located next door. And yeah, everyone was excited and available and up for it. We're taking over the room for 2 days. We're workshopping material in the space and then performing it. We're figuring it out, and then the audience come in and we're doing it. And that's going to tape, which is exciting and high pressure. But, a lot of my favorite jazz recordings were made that way. And I want to tap into that. I want to get that excitement for myself and for the crowd and for the band. Really experience that togetherness that kind of environment engenders and put that at the center of the work.
This is the cover art concept.
It's a huge amount of fun to play with these musicians in the kind of history of jazz composition. Some of my favorite composers, Charles Mingus and Ornette Coleman and Duke Ellington, and then more recent composers as well, people who are associated with the Chicago School and the New York downtown thing. A lot of them are making music in communities with musicians that they know really well. So they're thinking about those personalities more so than they are the instruments that are getting played. And it's a very close relationship. It becomes very close because you're being very vulnerable with each other.
Let's see what happens.
Cool. When we get to the end of the Flugel solo, maybe we could do a bit of open improv on the fan before the double end.
Yeah.
I'm Jamie Stockbridge. I play the baritone and the alto saxophone in John Pope Quintet. John and I met at Newcastle University when I first arrived as a sort of 18-year-old. He was one of the people you would look up to, a figure of admiration. So then, to be at the point where I'm in the band now and sort of seeing one another as peers is really nice.
Jamie Stockbridge marries a precise approach to the saxophone where he's very in control of the instrument to this kind of firebrand streak that sort of challenges that in him. And I really love the feeling of tension that I get when I hear him play, where this very controlled and capable musician is pushing himself out of his comfort zone all of the time and really looking for new things to do.
My name is Faye MacCalman. I play the saxophone and the clarinet and I sing.
Faye and I have worked together a lot, and we have a creative shorthand that I think is really, really rare. don't often meet musicians who you just trust are on the same page as you intuitively and instinctively.
I love being in this band. It's really an amazing group of musicians who are all quite different, actually, but all work together in a really exciting way, and I never know what to expect from people, and I'm really inspired by listening to everyone.
She's also got this incredible melodic sensibility, which is like no one else I've ever heard. She plays the clarinet and the saxophone improvisationally like Frank Zappa plays the guitar. There's this blues aspect to it, which is really prominent. But then she makes these wild note choices that are completely kind of left field.
My name is Graham. I play trumpet with the John Pope Quintet.
He's been a figure on the Tyneside jazz scene for as long as I've been making music here. He's a slightly elder figure in the music, so to me it's quite a thing to have someone in the band who was a figure in the scene when I was coming up. He's a musician with a great grasp of the traditional voice of the trumpet in jazz, and we played off and on in different contexts for a while. And I didn't know about his familiarity with free improvisation and free jazz. And then when I put the band together originally, it was suggested to me that Graham Hardy was a trumpet player who was familiar with that language and that approach. So I kind of tentatively asked him if he was up for it, and he threw himself straight at it. And he's been a vital part of the band since its inception. He's also really steeped in New Orleans music, and he spends a lot of time playing that kind of thing. So he understands the contrapuntal and collective improvisational voice which runs all the way through this music from its very beginning. He's very tuned to people, and he's a very sensitive listener and a very open kind of conduit for how people are feeling, and it's vital to have him in the band.
I'm Johnny and I play the drums.
I'm really lucky to work with loads of amazing drummers, but Johnny Hunter possibly might be my favourite drummer. I don't really have anything else to say beyond that. I'm slightly politically worried about that because I play with a lot of drummers. Johnny Hunter is an incredible drummer with the elasticity of feel to go from swing to far out fire music to near silence to gestural improvisation to deep grooves. He's got it all in hand, and he has this incredible composer's ear. He's a fantastic composer in his own right. As a drummer, he brings all of that into the momentary involvement in the music. I'm always surprised by what he does and how it improves everything. It just brings everything to life.
I've always felt like I've had a really good connection with John, like musically. It's just always felt right, it's always felt natural. He writes such great tunes, and the melodies that he writes and the bass lines that he writes, they're really strong.
We've got a really intuitive thing going on where we'll play games with each other, we'll cat and mouse around things, and then frequently we find ourselves sort of looking at the same beat or the same division from either end and sort of going, how did you end up there? Oh, how did you end up there? Oh, never mind, we'll work our way back. And I don't know, he's always throwing curveballs in a way that is exciting and stimulating.
One of the things with this group that means it works is everyone is a band leader. It means there is already just like a built-in empathy for how John is feeling about it, because we've all also been the person that would be where John is. There's also, especially with this kind of improvised music, the understanding that when he puts a piece of music in front of you, and one of the pieces of music is 3 bars long, and the recordings are going to, for that particular piece, are going to be over 5 minutes easily. So inherent in being given a piece of music that looks like that is, okay, he trusts us to create something. It's almost built into the fabric of the project that he has a trust in us to realize a certain thing.
While there is prescriptive elements within the music that John writes, within that we have the scope to take it wherever we kind of want. There's just a lot of freedom and a lot of support in whatever you choose to express.
Playing in John's band, it feels like you're kind of being dared to be as creative as you possibly can. And it feels like all the pieces of music that he writes are geared towards that. So it's quite different, I feel, to a lot of other jazz.
There's stuff that I do in this band that I just wouldn't do in a different one.
You can take risks, and even if it doesn't come off the way you wanted it to, it kind of happens in this environment where it's still a good thing. Having the energy and the feeling of pushing something is more important than like kind of accuracy.
In a way, you get more of a crutch with a fully notated piece of music, and you don't have to like expose yourself in quite the same way. Whereas it is just like you and your thoughts and your instrument go. As much as it's like a well of opportunity, it also like means that you're giving an awful lot of yourself. And I find with this band, everyone in it is giving an awful lot of themselves. It's quite a vulnerable thing to do.
I'm so much more interested in what the band are up to and what the other musicians I'm working with are doing. I almost want to forget about me as much as I can. Yeah, getting away from you and getting away from, I guess it's ego. You know, are you trying to present something which makes you look good, or are you trying to present something which serves, which has something that people can take and nourishes people, gives them a thing? That's much more important than does my bass fill sound any good?
The moments that are most special are when you really have moved beyond the kind of thought in terms of the mechanics of like your instrument or whatever, and it's purely like open ears, quite often closed eyes at the same time, and then everything can begin to come together.
It's a bit like magic, I think, when you really get in the flow.
It's just so much more alive and different every time, and not knowing what's going to happen, but trusting it's going to be good and trusting you're going to be supported is what's so wonderful.
Our interaction, our social understanding of each other is reflected in the way that we play as much as it is the way that we talk to one another. And that does have to do with trust, but then it also has to do with just knowing those personalities.
I won't know how they'll play, but I understand how they might choose to express themselves. That awareness, and I'm sure they have it of me as well. Even though roles are constantly shifting, we have confidence in each other's music that things will just happen and it'll always be exciting.
When you arrive at those points where you are kind of truly in the moment together, when you get to be with 4 other people and they've helped to create that space for you, you do feel like a genuine kind of gratitude that this is currently happening.
When you're improvising, you need to trust yourself, and also the other musicians on stage. The fact that we all get on, and there's a lot of humour as well. And so when we get on stage, this trust and this humour and this playfulness really does translate to a musical freedom.
Good evening.
Of all the albums I've ever made, this has been the most condensed process from my perspective. And I have no doubt that it's been a massive thing for John for a long time. We saw the music on Wednesday and then all went away for like 3 or 4 days and then started recording it on Monday.
And he'd been worried about, I don't know, I've got these ideas, I'm not really sure how it's going to work. We get in and there's a fully formed album that he puts in front of it, and it's really, really strong. It sounded great.
Hearing that music for the first time after it's lived in your head and then sort of scratched out on paper in a rudimentary fashion. On the one hand, it's an enormous relief to know that it's real, it really sounds like what you wanted it to. On the other hand, it's surprising because it takes it in directions that you hadn't necessarily thought of when you were cooking it up in your head. It's interesting now that this is a second record for the band because I have got a bit of experience playing with these guys and writing music for them. and having an idea of what they might do with a specific direction or territory. So it's been really fascinating to sort of see which bits have kind of gone, yep, that sounds like I thought it would, or that sounds completely different and a brand new idea, and another exciting direction to kind of take something down. There's a huge risk in just rolling tape and saying this is going to be it, but it's about risk. It's about kind of, I dare you. Any idea that might not be slick or perfect or neat pales in comparison to the excitement and the charge that you get when something lands. What I hope to give to the audience is a glimpse into that process of making and discovering momentarily, and bring them into it.
And the beat that should be sent is a back.
This one, I liked that it got quite chaotic when we played it last night, which is fun. Maybe it might just be worth spending a bit of time all playing each line, just so that we get them nice and locked in, so that we know which line is which and where they're sort of landing against the solid beat.
Totally. Yeah.
So we are at the end of our second day of workshopping. We did a performance last night to a crowd of about 30 odd friends. And then today we came in and we spent some time giving each other notes and zeroing in on bits that we thought we needed to tighten up.
A total experiment for later. Just almost as like a practice exercise. Mm-hmm. Should we try going from like totally not this to like quite rigidly this, and that's like the contour. Okay. Have quite a free thing and then landing into it.
Yeah, I like that.
Or something. It's almost like the opposite of...
That's a really nice idea. It starts cloudy and glittery, and then slowly becomes kind of angularly melodic improv. And then this emerges somehow. And then we can break it down to clapping, and then we can play this again and finish as a shape for it. That's quite nice. This was ace.
Yeah, that was
This
great.
was ace. Great.
Yeah, Faye, man.
I really like the sound of you two doubling that melody in that sort of very loose way too. It's just super, super sweet. That's really, really perfect for that one. Capturing the band, doing the thing that we do live is really, really happening. It's really coming through. And to get that charged atmosphere, which is what this band is so good at navigating and conjuring, and it's there. I knew it as soon as we got on stage last night. I knew that it was there. And I'm sure we're going to get it again tonight.
Good album, John.
I think it feels real nice as a collection of music. It sort of has a whole bunch of stuff in it, which is good.
Have a look at that.
Please. Now he reads. I will just take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to the Star and Shadow staff, the volunteers tonight and last night. A big round of applause for those folks. Spaces like this are the lifeblood of a creative scene. You know, being able to come in and spend this amount of time with this music, with each other, it gives this whole thing the grist and the material that it needs. And so I'm incredibly grateful to you guys all for giving us that space. We're going to move on now with a piece called Shadow Work. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're here at Blank Studios, we're mixing the recordings that we made at the Star and Shadow. I gave myself a nice long stretch of runway where I just didn't think about things. You know, we recorded it and I deliberately kind of drew a veil over it and said, I'm going to come back to this when I've had some space. And I've done that now. Spent a bit of time listening to things. I got together with another friend of mine, a musician called John Garner. We listened together. So I had an objective pair of ears on it alongside my own. It was really curious to go back and listen again, especially with someone else in the room who hadn't heard it. the bits that I'd forgotten about in terms of the detail, the specific notes that get played, the specific phrases and gestures that sort of appear in people's playing, was lovely to hear that again, because my overwhelming memory of it had been sort of about form and energy, and I'd sort of remembered the narrative of a particular tune in a broad way. So going back in with that distance, it's a strange position to find yourself in, but that's again part of the beauty of this way of working, is that it's showing you it. You know, even after the fact, you go back in, you get a whole other perspective on how it's happened and how it went down. And having another musician there in that listening process, and then also in this mixing process, you know, John is an excellent musician as well. His ears are great and his sensibility is great. It just makes that whole trusting process that much easier, because you have other people there and you can turn to them and say, you know, how do you feel about this? Are you getting the same feeling from this that I am? So not counting those three at the end, under an hour.
So with one of those pieces in, it's going to be an hour on the nose, isn't it?
Okay. Maybe we don't need them. Album length aside, I'm quite comfortable not including them.
If we can get the whole start to finish album like sequenced.
Okay.
So you've got...
I got the sense while listening to it that it felt like I remembered it feeling, which was kind of the whole point of doing it the way that we've done it, is to try and make sure that that sense of it being a live performance is captured. It's charged with that live sensibility and that in front of people feeling. In terms of keeping the audience in place, it's like an album or a live album. And I think just coming back down to the idea of it being an album and having it sit on its own, having the songs sit on their own, it just makes the most sense in my head for some reason. We'd had an audience of people there who really connected with it and were so generous with their listening and with their spirit for it. I do think there is something about the fact that we're being listened to while we're playing it. I think you can hear it, the effect that it's having on us as musicians. You know, it's almost like everyone had to be there to sort of bring the thing out a little bit, so everyone's kind of woven into it a little bit. The feeling of the room and of the event is trapped in it. There's a Faye MacCalman saxophone solo in the tune Sheer Yo. For some reason, I think that tune and that second night, it just really landed and she took off.
Hey, MacCalman, for Christ's sake!
I've been complaining about feeling ill all day. Like, I don't feel well. And then on that gig, it was just like, for whatever reason, that bit was meant to sort of be her feature anyway, and she was just like, right, let's kick the door down. Absolutely mega. Right, something really happened, so it's definitely going on the record. You maybe have an idea in your mind about how you want it to pan out. And even with all of my philosophizing about things dictating their own shape, or, you know, things being what they want to be, you do a certain amount of ego battling with yourself as a composer. You come up against moments where you sort of go, that wasn't what I thought it was, that wasn't necessarily what I might have set out to do. And you go through a bit of a process of letting go of my concerns and worries about that, which isn't always easy. It has a little bit of that feeling of, I had this idea for you as a piece, I had this idea for the album that it would be one thing, and it turned out to be something which is related to that, but its own thing, its own world, and that's beautiful. It's the beginning of a process. You know, these tunes are going to have a life afterwards. We're going to go out and continue to play. You know, we're going to continue to do gigs, and we're always going to be finding new avenues in that music. We might still have versions of these songs to play that are far more definitive than what's going to be on the record. The record is a beautiful snapshot of where we were, and that's everything that it needs to be. I'm really excited to share this. I'm really, really excited to share this. It was such a joy to be with those musicians again. And if that had been the only outcome, I think that would have been all I needed. Everything afterwards, it's just a chance to share it and to let it have more life after that. I mean, what more could you ask for? It's so It's so good to get to do this. I can't wait. I really, really can't wait for that to have more life after the fact, and for us to keep exploring it. A huge thanks to Help Musicians and to the Peter Whittingham Jazz Award team. Thanks to Wesley Stevenson and everyone at New Jazz and Improvised Music Recordings. Thanks to everyone in the band. They're all the best. Faye MacCalman, Jamie Stockbridge, Johnny Hunter, Graham Hardy. Just wonderful musicians and fantastic friends. Thanks to the Star Shadow. Thanks to Blank Studios. Thanks to John Garner for listening. Thanks to Lucy Woolley. Thanks to Emma Johnson. Who else do I need to thank? Thanks to you as well for everything you've done in putting this thing together and documenting it. Yeah, do I need to thank anybody else? I think that's maybe everyone. Jen Goodall, I should thank my wife, Jen. I should thank Jen. Don't thank her. That'll be a problem. No, that won't be a problem.